Thank you guys both for the detailed introduction. And of course, we're going to definitely dig into the more technical details about how your DeFi design works. But I know we are lacking a part here, which is Orderbooks, which we'll also touch. And before we dig into the technical details, let's discuss what DeFi actually means to the users. Because a lot of the average audience, they still don't know what DeFi is. What additional values does DeFi bring to the users when comparing to traditional finance?
Oh yeah, so I think DeFi, just by the name, it's pretty clear, right? It stands for decentralized finance. But then you might be asked, okay, why do we need decentralized finance? I think the short explanation is basically it decentralizes the financial system just like Bitcoin decentralized money. So again, I guess the short answer to what's the added value for doing like that is basically the same thing as how do you think what's the added value for Bitcoin brings to the money system, right? And that is the similar value that the DeFi brings to the financial system. So of course, that's the very short answer. I think we can also go over into details during this conversation today.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because I think that's where it all starts, right? It all starts with the fact that Bitcoin created censorship-resistant money, fully decentralized, and it kind of perpetuated this whole philosophy of money, which is very much needed. But I think that there's also a nuance here around what is DeFi philosophically and what can DeFi be in practice in order for it to scale, right? And I think philosophically, it's all about transparency. It's all about smart contract, code is law in a sense. And the fact that it's decentralized and fully censorship resistant means that people have the same shot, right? So you have a system that's fully transparent. People have the same opportunity and there's nothing that can stop you from doing things. It's the whole concept of permissionless trading, right? And I think it's kind of interesting that lately we've seen a lot of complications with that, right? So we're looking at Tornado Cash and OPEC sanctions and stuff. On the one hand, censorship is bad, right? I think the whole ethos of our industry is that we want to make sure that we don't create the same financial system as before. But at the same time, you don't want terrorists to be able to move their money on DeFi because that's also really bad. Again, maybe this is a topic of like a future conversation, but I want to add a little bit of practical lens to this, which is I think in practice, there will be some sort of control, some sort of solution that we can collectively find against these bad actors. The way I think more about DeFi, I think of democratizing finance. What I mean by that, the very simple concept of a dollar is a dollar, right? So when you think institutional investors in the US, they get deals for the startups, they get deals for the seed rounds and Series A's and so on. And they have that advantage that their money has access to products that normal people's money doesn't have access to, right? So then you have your Sequoia that can get into a seed round of name a successful company, Silicon Valley, and like 1,000x their money. But then you have someone who lives in a normal kind of like lower class or middle class kind of family in the States, who's not what we call an accredited investor, doesn't have access to the same things, right? So I think from a practical standpoint, no matter how this converges, in my opinion, DeFi is supposed to do two things. A, it's supposed to allow access for people to invest their money in a very fair way. And B, it's supposed to bring transparency and balance in checks, right? And remove the obscurity of middlemen, for example, Celsius and things that happen behind closed doors. And then the rest, obviously, it's up to interpretation. But I would say practically, I think it's about access and transparency.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And I really like the idea you said, a dollar is a dollar. It's not only the way that people are going to have a more fair access or transparency, different financial services. It's also about how you deploy your money, right? Or what the money value actually means. I don't want to touch on whether one USDT or one USDC, what it means in the whole monetary system. But another thing is like, if you have a centralized party, let's say a bank, right, or the country, they can always print more money. So money, I think essentially philosophically it's a concept, right? How much purchasing value does it have? And now we are seeing crazy inflation rate. I think when we talk about money, those things all should be taken into consideration. But of course, this conversation is not around that. So let's save that for a future conversation. But thank you for bringing up that point.